Hey, Dr. Brett. I don't know if it's the ease into summer that's got me really just manifesting or trying to manifest one of those windows down in the car, volume up kind of moments where you're just listening to nonstop bops and bangers. It's got me thinking, as does the fact that you and I are about to embark on yet another Ticketmaster fiasco, hoping that the fates, the gods smile upon us and we can get into another concert. But all of this combined just has me thinking about music, musicality, and maybe just having a more lighthearted conversation. I think we should put together a little mixtape for the viewers, especially since we're about to embark on a little bit of a summer break on the pod. I think it's time to do a little mixtape episode for the listeners. This is the Dock to Dock podcast.
It's voice notes turned podcast. Place as perspective. Welcome back, folks, to the Dock to Dock podcast. My name is Dr. Brett, coming to you from, I don't even know, haven't been outside and can't tell you how long. It's still Southern California, so it was rainy this morning, but that was a lot of hours ago. So I have no idea what it is now. And it's relevant to this week's episode, why I have not been outside in a long time. And we'll share that in just a second.
Cliffhanger. I'm Nicole. I'm coming to you live from Washington, D.C., where I think the weather is pretty nice out today. But like Dr. Brett, haven't been outside. But in a rare turn of events, I'm in all black today. And Dr. Brett is wearing, if you're watching us, is wearing pink, which is not a color that you don't wear. But I just think it's an interesting role reversal where I feel very much Dr. Brett in my sort of goth outfit today.
Yeah, I decided to be a little bit more celebratory today. I was trying to lean into some of the vibes for our conversation, which I'm very excited about, and also not to keep the listeners on edge for too long. What I was trying to do earlier today was get pre-sale tickets for the Olivia Rodrigo Unraveled tour. It was the American Express pre-sale and was unsuccessful. Queued on two different devices for two different nights for the Los Angeles shows that will be in January. We're going to go to these shows together if we are successful. We decided we did not want to spend $500 per person on the VIP experience. We didn't really know what all that entails, but that was outside of our budget. So we are going to try again in the general sale.
Yeah, which I think by the time that this launches may or may not have happened. So I'm going to put it out there. Good vibes, fingers crossed, thumbs pressed, as they would say in Germany. Whatever, if you pray. By the time this hits the airwaves, let's hope we got through and we got them, so to speak. I'm just thinking about that Ticketmaster. You got them. You're in. And we're not going to break the bank because I don't know, we're not Baron robbers over here, and certainly not monetizing with the pod. Sponsors, if you want to still support us, would happily take that complimentary VIP package, courtesy of sponsor.
I mean,
to
Amex,
concert, but
if you want to sponsor us, I've been a card holder since 2001. Olivia, I've been a listener since, I don't know exactly when your first album came out. Longtime listener. So we are accepting sponsors.
Yeah. But I think this is a great place for us to start because today's episode, a bit lighter. I'm excited. I agree with you. We're going to talk about music, talking about bops, bangers.
Some sad girl tunes.
Like we are music people. We love a good concert. Sometimes we hate on a good concert at the same time. We've been to concerts together, trying to actively get in the queue. But I feel like where we have to start with this before we even remotely get into discussion about some really fun questions, I think, for our listeners about favorite albums, artists, so on and so forth, is talking exactly about where we're at right now, which is how fucking difficult it is to actually be someone who likes live music in 2026 because of the way that the concert sphere and specifically the process of getting tickets to see an artist is tremendously painful, both financially and also in terms of like time and labor intensive just to even to get in the door is a whole thing that was not a thing I think pre-Eras tour, but I'm curious, like, where you think
Well,
this has
I
started.
definitely think that there is I think things go through waves, honestly, because there is a new, I think, post pandemic probably, and Eras Tour
Mm,
has capitalized on that energy to be back out in public and to be comfortable at large scale events and to create something that was an experience. It wasn't just,
mm,
to hear the latest album. You were hearing a career and you were seeing such theatricality to each album, which was also really challenging other artists to step it up. I will give Taylor credit
yeah,
to that. It really set the bar on what a live show should be. And it broke the internet. That is not hyperbole. It broke Ticketmaster to the fact that they had to redo the sale the next day or a few days later. I was in the queue for the tickets that for the show that you and I went to. I think I got in the queue around 9 in the morning and was not able to check out until almost 5 p.m. that day. And I think that although that was a lot of time, because they slow rolled things, it actually went efficiently to the sense that it didn't break
mm.
their own website.
Yeah, I think you would agree with me, and I don't really know, and I don't think this is what we're gonna do on the pod today of, like, how
Mm.
you resolve that, but that artificial scarcity that is enhanced by the way that Ticketmaster queues, alongside the fact that there is not robust regulation, at least in the United States, as it relates to resellers or scalper or transfer of
Or
tickets.
dynamic price.
Dynamic pricing, which is like the bane of my fucking existence. I dealt with that trying to get Mayhem tour tickets. And it just, it boiled my blood that I could be in the queue, number 2000 and get in within 5 minutes and tickets were
Yeah.
already $700 for upper bowl or whatever. Like it's absolutely ridiculous. And because there's this lack of protections, like Ticketmaster does things better than other systems, but I don't know, maybe I've crossed the Rubicon into just being that version of an old part of a generation that, like we can bitch about boomers or Gen X, but now maybe I'm in that millennial era myself where I'm just like, I remember a time when this
But
wasn't a thing. And I'm like, how do we recreate those
art should
conditions?
be accessible, and music is art.
I
And
agree.
but interestingly, I
Yeah.
think this came up briefly on the pod a few weeks ago when we were talking about Coachella, where Pearl Jam was fighting this battle against Ticketmaster in 1995, and
Yeah.
they were alone. And they testified in front of Congress alone because no other artist was willing to stick their neck out against the monopoly. And 31 years later, we finally have lawsuits that are saying, yeah, Ticketmaster and um, Live Nation, you are running an illegal monopoly. And back
Right.
then, that was because tickets were like $50, and there were
Yeah.
interviews with Kurt Cobain where he was shocked. And I think he might have been talking about, and forgive me if I'm not trying to intentionally call anyone out. I think he might have been talking about like a Madonna show or like a U2 show, and when he heard that it was like
Mm.
$45, he was shocked because he was like, we don't sell any tickets for more than $15 or $20. Because why would we want like the people that we're looking out at to be folks who couldn't afford that price?
And the price is one part. The other part is the frenzy and this idea that people have to go to these experiences, which I also think is the other probably more difficult part of the equation to eventually solve because maybe some of these lawsuits actually do break up the monopolies or um, require additional reform, some of which have already happened as a result, actually, because of the Eras Tour being so demonstrative of some issues that actually they made a lot of changes, which I think were pretty positive, people would say, from a
Mm.
buyer's perspective. But then the frenzy part, which I thought about eras, but I think you're right, of coming out of COVID and coming out of the pandemic, that people were so eager, myself included, to participate in the world, to live in experiences. And then also coupling that with hypervisibility of now streaming or live streaming or sharing them on social media makes it such that like if you don't go to a particular event, then you feel
Mhm.
left out. and that FOMO is like on steroids. And so there's an excess of people that may or may not be interested in going or maybe otherwise wouldn't. But because of that frenzy, that I don't know how much of it is artificial or if it's sort of self-replicating because of the systems where we're sharing on these platforms about going and being part of that experience. Everyone suddenly is trying to get into a world tour, which in theory, like I remember going to a lot of case in point, Radiohead is about to go on a world tour this year. I have had the great privilege of seeing Radiohead. Excellent concert. Love them. I'm definitely going to be talking a little bit more about them on the pod. I went back in, I think it was 2011 or 2012, the last time I saw them. And I had not heard about the
Mhm.
concert for a while. I was late to the party by all means, managed to get great seats, lower bowl, probably a month or two prior to the concert, got them as a gift for myself and a friend, had a fantastic experience. I don't think in any circumstance now, like one, that I will have the energy to queue up into the Ticketmaster frenzy to try to get Radiohead tickets. Nor do I think that if I came super late to that party not prepared, that I would be able to find something remotely affordable because even though it's at scale, like they are going to all of these venues that should house enough
Yeah.
people to see their music, there is still that demand that can't then match with like the people that are late to the party or just like genuinely maybe decide that they want to engage with that artist. And it's like the scale I think also for artists is difficult because no matter how many shows they seem to add to a world tour, like Era's tour went on for
Mhm.
what, almost 2 years. Like it was still a bloodbath to
Yeah.
get to those concerts, right? Like it just wasn't enough to feed that appetite, and I don't know how you resolve that.
And it's one of those things where it feels tough to find that compromise, and there probably isn't one. And
Uh-huh.
I think something like the Eras Tour also does walk that fine line of there is the FOMO element. And I think things like Coachella, where it's not about the music anymore, it's about the scene, and it is about the documentation of it and the about uh, seen in a different iteration of the word of being seen there and putting it on social media, and the performative aspect of going to things so that others see that you were
Yeah.
there, as opposed to going to enjoy art for art's sake.
And there's a part of me because I know listeners are they're gonna catch it. So I caught it before you all did. And I get it's like, do as I say, not as I do, right? Or do as I do, not as I say. What is that? Either way, hypocrite sort of probably alert if there's sirens, if we had sound effects. We
Not
don't have a
yet.
budget for sound effects. But I don't want to go back to my hipster days and just be like, these people
Mhm.
don't even appreciate the artists, blah, blah, blah. Like I knew about them before they were cool. I saw them in this small stadium. Now everyone suddenly likes this artist. And if you appreciate the art for the art, you can't even get in. But at the same time, as much as I'm like, I don't want to resort to that because, hey, if you want to go, you want to go. The performative part or the lack of accessibility, I think is it's actually the lack of accessibility as much as the performance that I'm mad at. Like the performance part irks me just because that's not how I choose to live my life. But if that's what people want to do, that's what people want to do. But then the accessibility part of music or art in general is something that I deeply take concern with that. And what are the conditions that are creating that circumstance? And this is a music episode, but like the Met Gala just happened right before we
The
recorded,
Bezos
which
Gala,
has
you
its own
mean?
series of problems. The Bezos Gala, but I think there was I think it might have been the Union at the Met, and I might be misquoting it, but I saw somewhere online of someone posting of like, it's really ridiculous that Lauren Sanchez Bezos, who is the co-sponsor of the Met Gala this year alongside Jeff Bezos, which basically just means they like paid to become sponsors this year because it's a sellout at this point. Are actively talking throughout their campaigning of like the Met Gala is important. It's relevant in 2026 because it's a fundraiser for the arts. But then like the response naturally and what was highlighted in this is it's like, well, we wouldn't need fundraisers if people like you actually paid your fair
Yeah.
share of taxes so that we could fund the arts for everyone. Why is it that you're willing to spend all of this money for the performance of being the co-host of the Met Gala, of getting to walk up the steps, of getting to do the bullshit costuming, which don't even get me started on. For once, AI was better. Like, you look at the AI generated images of people's outfits this year versus what people actually showed up in. I think the AI wins. But the whole performance of it is so costly and so expensive when institutions, even like the Met since 2018, have not been accessible widely like they used to be for people to go see the art and engage. So the thing that you're claiming to support is actually the thing that you're defrauding and defunding. And the accessibility part underneath it is bad. So, to the performance then of concerts, of being seen somewhere or wanting to go, sure, if you have cash and you want to go see Olivia Rodrigo and that sounds fun, or if you want to stream it, great. But then the systems underneath that, even from the artist pricing the concert themselves, which they have an active choice in how they can negotiate what a ticket costs, whether they put on dynamic pricing or not. Like these are all choices by the artist that I think also influence who gets to go there if they even get into the door, or in the case of music these days, if they even get into the
Mhm.
queue on
Yeah, because
Ticketmaster.
even thinking about like the Eras Tour example that I gave, or this morning, or again, bringing it back to like my stupid Pokemon hobby, a lot of it is who has access and the privilege of time. And, I work a
Yeah.
job where I'm sitting at a desk and a computer and I can have multiple screens open and I don't have people policing that I can do things that are leisurely while also doing my work. That's not the same for everybody. I have friends who, while I was queued for Olivia Rodrigo, were at any number of different Costco's around Southern California for a Pokemon drop this morning. That is not something that I have the privilege of doing during the week, And so, like, hobbies are being limited to certain types of access and privilege. And like that is a shitty, disappointing reality of capitalism. I remember,
Yeah.
because even, talking about like some of these in person Pokemon drops, like I've said that I miss the days of getting concert tickets when I was in like junior high and high school before online Ticketmaster. I remember the first time that I went to a concert with my friends was to see the Smashing Pumpkins in, I think this was probably 1995, maybe
Ooh,
96.
peak
This
era,
was
peak
before
era.
like I very much soured on Billy Corgan and before he very much became a soured old cantaloupe. And where we went to the J.C. Penney at Eden's Plaza, shout out to folks who know from Glenview, Illinois. And it was a group of people, and you didn't have to line up. It did not matter what time you got there, but starting at, let's say, probably 9:30, they walked around. Everyone got a lotto ticket or like a raffle ticket. And then
Mm.
at 9:45, they had one person, usually it was like a kid, or I might have even been one of my friends because we were among the youngest folks there, pulled out a number. And let's say that it was numbers 1 through 50 that were given out. The number that was pulled, let's say, was 33. So then you line up 33 through 50, 1 to 32. And that was the order that you buy tickets. So you didn't have to camp out overnight. This was a way to actually stop people from camping out. It was just a random lot of like lotto system. And it worked. And, there was some novelty to it. Is it the most fair system? I don't know. It's not that far off from the randomized queue that we get now, but it doesn't require technology. It does require, again, privilege of
True.
time that you can get to a place, but it's over very
Mhm.
quick.
And also, again, the scale of it. I mean, not that I don't think that JCPenney probably was bumping, but for example, today, I think I messaged you that the queue for London for Olivia Rodrigo at one point was 130,000 people. And and I know that we're not huge athletics fans as far as I know, or sport girlies, but I think it's every sort of domain of I just want to go and I want to enjoy myself for entertainment's sake. And those opportunities I think are worth going to and should be accessible to people. It should be accessible to people at scale. The arts are a place that becomes even more and more difficult to enjoy. Live music is more difficult to enjoy because there's too many queues, it's too expensive. But then I think about like even the
Mm.
World Cup, which is supposed to be this event that brings people together. Well, I'm thinking about, maybe you can correct me because I have not lived in New York or in the Jersey area, but thinking about how expensive it is to get to the stadium for the matches that are going to be in New Jersey, right? Like what was once a fare, I think of $20 to get from downtown Manhattan to Jersey is not $20 anymore. It's over $100 just to transport people back and forth.
Yeah.
It's absurd. of just trying to get to an event that's supposedly designed, or at least it says it's designed to be scalable for
Or
people en
thinking
masse.
about how you spend however many hundreds of dollars for the ticket and then have to spend another
Hmm.
65, 75, $100 to park at the venue that you've already paid a venue fee attached to the ticket, you know?
True. True. Plus all the outfits. I mean, because now these things, it's about the performance, right? If you're posting on social media, you got to be wearing all the cute clothes, or
Mhm.
you got to get the merch. Which I'm not going to hate on the
Yeah,
merch because I do love the merch.
we love the
We both
merch.
love the merch. You have to then get the outfits, you have to do the accommodation if you're traveling, because also the other part of these queues is it's like, okay, well, what's the game that I can play geographically of like, where do I go to have the best chance of success because I have to go to the event, which sometimes means people are traveling middle of the country. That's what we did. The first time I went inside the Eras tour is we strategically found places in Kansas City because we were like, oh, nobody's going to want to go there. We'll have a better chance than East Coast or West Coast. I know people that'll travel internationally because it's supposedly cheaper to fly to Paris because
Mm.
the ticket was cheap. But then you've still got the flight internationally, you've got the accommodation and the sustainability impact on that as well. You've got the fuel and all the outfits you're buying, probably single use, plastic, Amazon returns. Like it is a whole thing that on one hand, I get why people said during the Eras tour, Taylor Swift literally boosted the economy of certain cities that she was in. It was an income generator, but it's also just such a mass waste generator at the same time that then I think when I internalize that, because I have done this thing. I have flown to LA to see Eras, or even right now for Olivia, like it's very
Mhm.
likely that we will travel for that if we go. One of us. I'm part of that system, but it also makes me feel really shitty because at the end of the day, I'm like, well, I do want to consume these things and enjoy them for what they are, but I'm also contributing by being complicit in my behavior to systems that I fundamentally am like, this gives me the ick, but I'm in it and there's no way to get out of it other than saying like, I guess I just don't go see live music anymore, which is hard for someone who, like you, thoroughly
Mhm.
enjoys a concert. So, I mean, I think it's if there's a will, there's a way. But at the end of the day, like I said, wish us luck for Olivia. But Brett, I will not be spending $5,000.
Probably check the show notes. I think we might have a little asterisk down at the bottom with an update on how we did. So I think with that, we will take a little break and then we'll be right back with our first Dock to Dock mixtape.
All right, welcome back, folks. So this is the mixtape. So we are going to get into it, but I think we probably won't get into everything because as we were putting together the notes, we had a lot
Yeah,
of thoughts. I was like, I'm a fire hose. I could
it's
just
very
go
much
on and
volume
on and
one.
on. Yeah, yeah, volume one. So on that note, though, because it's volume one, we got to let the people know who we are. Dr. Brett, when did you start listening to music? And not like in the womb, you know.
She
Deb was
was.
playing I don't
No.
Bach. Oh, okay. Well, shout out to Deb. But like, when did you kind of maybe come into your taste, your formative taste of like when you really started getting interested? And like, if I was to open up your streaming platform, or if you had a mixtape, like what's going to be on it? Who are you
Yeah.
musically?
So music has always been a big part of my identity and who I am. And I do credit that very significantly to both friends of the pod, Deb and Jason. My mom, very much a child of the 60s and 70s. Her dad, I always goof this up a little bit, but this is part of her lore. Her dad, I think, owned a pawn shop that had the like early version of the Ticketmaster machine. And so they would just print
Oh,
the ticket.
okay.
She sat front row at like you name someone that toured in the 70s and she sat front row. And
Damn,
there's a great
Deb.
story about she was backstage for a show. I always goof it up and I like to tell people it was The Who or like some other big name band. It was like, I'm pretty sure it was the opener, but she was like 13 and
Mm.
the guitar player of a band was like hitting on her and her dad walked over and was like, I'm going to knock your ass down the stairs if you don't like back away from her.
Ah,
True story. The specific details are
oy.
wrong, but that is a true story. But she grew up like she loved the Beatles because we are Jewish. When John Lennon made the comment about, we're bigger than Jesus, and a lot of her friends were like getting rid of their albums, she collected everything. So like she still has like first edition Beatles albums. We have first edition Grateful Dead, Rolling Stones, you name it. She has Janis Joplin, like everything. So
Mm,
I very much grew up listening to classic rock, the counterculture, Woodstock. Like that's all fundamental to who I am as a person. Obviously, I think that is no surprise to listeners, that's the culture that I grew up looking towards. And I remember when I was 12 and I was at home just before seventh grade started, and I saw the news report that Jerry Garcia died. And I immediately went and I put on
mm,
American Beauty and I listened to Truckin'. And that was the start of jam music for me and became fundamentally important to like my development. And then I remember also at my brother's bar mitzvah, there was just this really cool DJ who, in addition to like bar mitzvah dance music, also played songs from Pearl Jam's second album, Versus, was the first time that I heard grunge music, played a song from Soul Asylum, and was the first time I heard Four Non Blondes, just like blew my mind. And that's like when I started getting into music. And my brother and I started doing the scam with BMG and Columbia House, where you sign up for free memberships. You get all of these CDs for like a penny, and you sign up using fake names and you get all these free CDs, and then you just cancel the membership. And like, I don't know how it
mm,
was a scam for as long as it was, but like everyone was doing it for years and we got so much free music. So for a long time, it was, very much 90s grunge was my identity. And then, a little bit that intersected with jam bands, like different iterations of, which I think we'll talk when we talk about concerts, of like the Grateful Dead scene that existed after Jerry. But then there were other bands, like I never got into Fish specifically, but like that realm of thing. There was a band called the String Cheese Incident, Widespread Panic, and that kind of scene, because it also felt it was a culture. And it felt like a community.
mm,
And it was this sort of like traveling experience. And we would often go to several shows in a row and we would follow a band or follow a festival for several nights. And it felt like
mm,
you were part of something. And that was always really appealing. And then, like I've talked a little bit on the pod before, it wasn't until undergrad and I was living in New York where I kind of became more attuned into indie rock. And that's much more my identity now, although I will always have an affinity for grunge. Pearl Jam, Nirvana, like it hits in just this very specific way. But what I find myself drawn to now is more on the like singer songwriter kind of stuff. And like I've talked about a lot in my writing is particularly artists, musicians, and bands that are led by women, because it was something that I kind of didn't allow myself to enjoy when I was younger for a lot of like gender norm reasons. Also, things that are like more synthy, like Churches, which connects back to like my love of Cyndi Lauper and David Bowie. And obviously now we've talked a lot about expanding into Taylor Swift, K-pop, like being just more okay with whatever moves me, and not feeling like I need to be
mm.
genre specific.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
What about you, Dr. Nicole?
Uh, so unfortunately, I didn't have someone as cool as Deb as my North Star musically growing up. Music was always part of the house, but I think this is really where some of my sheltered religious kid upbringing. Now, when I look back at it, I don't think at the time I felt that way by any means. I was like, I'm pretty cool. I know what's going on. I think now I really see it with full clarity that I did not. My mom was a big fan of, probably still is, the Christian rock
Mm,
genre. So and the bands that were kind of in between, like sometimes the pop stations would, play like Switchfoot, but then they also were gospel-y. And so if you went to churches that played cool music, then they also played it. And so it had like double meaning. If you know, you know. And then on the other side, because I think also the religiosity really took shape when my parents split. I also just remember my dad listening to a
mm,
lot of country music. And so country music was always on in the car, which is, I think, kind of funny because I think a lot of people nowadays would say that I probably don't like country music. It's not true. I don't like a lot of the cultural associations in the same way that I don't like with other things that kind of come out of Southern culture related to racism and patriarchy. But I do have an affinity for some these early aughts country music. That's probably my sweet spot. Little Alan Jackson, some Kenny Chesney. It's also how I first like learned of
Mhm.
Taylor Swift, for example. Like I was first a Swiftie because of Country Tay. She was my favorite singer, in like, early high school because that was still very much my musical upbringing. I think, though, my musicality really expanded right as I was transitioning from middle school to high school. I had a friend at the time, her name was Autumn, who
Mhm.
made me a mixtape, right? I mean, I think this is such a I don't know if it's a lost art, but it's, like, it's so important of just sharing music with people, but she sent me a mixtape slash an email. Thank goodness for pirating music because it's how I was able to get things quickly and at mass scale and add them to my iPod. But she gave me this list of things that she was listening to. She knew what was going on. And that was an introduction to me for probably what still sits it with me as like one of my favorite musical eras, which is like the mid aughts, mid tens kind of alternative rock scene. And so I was getting recommendations for like the Shins, the Format,
Mhm.
a lot of indie music, a lot of kind of indie grunge, alternative rock. Like she sent me Muse, she sent me Radiohead, and I was immediately like, "Whoa, this is what music could be." And so it's just this really fun. My mom at the time would call it like
Mhm.
secular sort of introduction into music, alongside pop and other things. And then I think in some ways music was a little restricted. I was also a huge Beatles nerd. I think there's a particular brand of white lady that goes through this stage where you have a like Beatles fandom on steroids. And that was me. That's part of my lore. Where I was going to record shops and getting records and trying to get any form of Beatles content. Because if listeners remember, for a long time, you couldn't actually purchase or stream in any way
Oh,
like
yeah.
Beatles music. It was a part of like Apple, like so there were sort of like restrictions on how you could listen to it if it wasn't pirated. And so that became like an obsession for a while, which also then going to record stores and sifting through records and having that really physical feeling because I grew up on CDs, like was a new experience that introduced me to a lot of classic rock and a lot of soul music and jazz. And so I think like as my palette was developing, it also then matched other parts of my personality, which I've talked about how I antique a lot, but I've always really been a nostalgia kid. Like I have always gotten lost in books, or for listeners who've seen the movie Midnight in Paris, which is a Woody Allen film, but it is one of my favorite movies. And it's about this idea of like constantly looking back and
Mhm.
feeling nostalgia about certain places. For me, that's always sort of been like
Mhm.
Paris in the 20s, which is why I really love that movie because the character is the same vibe. But it's like engaging with older modalities of music alongside those sort of sonic
Mhm.
vibrations and feeling really just like transformed by music and putting on records and listening to them was part of how I just expanded that knowledge base. And then, like I said, at the time I had pirating tools, which were very cheap. Because if you pirate music, it's the cost is maybe like one weird album cover that's
Yeah.
not actually the album cover on your iPod, or like some dude giving you like DJ X before a song actually starts. So the quality you get more than
Mhm.
you have to like take in, I would say. Then allowed for by the time that I was graduating high school and starting university, streaming platforms finally came in, which then just eliminated any barrier to entry. And so I would say nowadays I pretty much go anywhere when it comes to music. I have some limitations. I don't think I carried Christian rock with me. Sorry, mom. And I probably don't listen to really heavy metal or screamo, although I have been that girl before. But I think like for me, it's all about vibe and it's about finding the right mood. Like I love to create a playlist nowadays that is trying to capture the essence of something. Like I recently created a playlist called like Cigarette in the Basement, which is just like a bunch of like picture yourself in like Ocean's 13 or Ocean's 11 and you've kind of got like a little bit of a like Italian
Mm.
basement, cigarette, glass of wine, you know, you're or very much like talented Mr. Ripley kind of vibe. And like I try to create sonic sort of sounds now and clusters that transport me to particular places
Mhm.
as well as time periods. But then generally like if a shuffle comes on of my like songs, like it could be something that is related to a musical. It could be something that's a country artist. It could be neo soul. I really love neo soul as a genre. Or like it could be something really stupid from like a Disney movie. Like
Is neo
I'm everywhere.
soul, would you put like Olivia Dean as neo soul, or she's like,
Yeah, I think like Olivia Dean adjacent. I think she's a little mainstream, but that's not a problem. I would say like Leon
okay,
Bridges is a great one. Before it was a genre like Frank
yeah.
Ocean, was kind of one of the OGs. Like there's what I'll probably do in the show notes is I will link my playlist
Mm.
because they're also public on the streaming platforms that I'm engaged with. If you're on them, feel free to follow or take a look. But I have a one that I would shout out in particular that I think really captures that essence called Sunday Service, which is funny to me because it's like my church
Mm.
playlist, even though y'all know, like if I go to church, it's through this playlist or I go to Fenway and
Mm.
that's about it.
So we have a lot of
So
questions in our
yeah,
doc.
let's do a
Like, yeah,
rapid
what,
fire.
where do you,
Okay. Rapid fire questions to Dr. Brett. Dr. Brett, what is a song that will always get you on the dance
so,
floor
so I don't dance. I don't care for
if
dancing.
you're dancing?
There's a bunch of reasons for that.
No,
But
but if we find you at a bar
so
mitzvah, like what are you
anything by
getting
Prince.
down?
And even
Ooh,
though I have complicated feelings, which we're not going to get into because this is rapid fire, PYT by Michael Jackson.
okay. Okay. Do you think that you have a best concert experience? And we can revisit some of these, but like top of
So a few come to mind, which I wrote down. So
okay.
because I think shortly after Eras, I tried to come up with like, what's my top 5, top 10 concerts. And I think I do have like my top 5
Mm,
probably. I think my favorite
okay.
concert experience was 2016 Pearl Jam, Wrigley Field, what ended up being 2 months
Ooh.
before they won the World Series. And we knew that something special was happening that year. And just the energy at Wrigley.
Yeah.
Eddie Vedder is a huge Cubs fan. It was the first time that I'd seen Pearl Jam with my brother Jason in 2016 in probably 10 years or more. And that was our like 11th or 12th Pearl Jam show that we'd seen together. And so
Mm,
incredible show. I probably put Eras at number 2. Um, and
okay.
then Julian Baker, who I've talked about on the pod before, saw her with Caleb, friend of the pod, at First Avenue in Minneapolis shortly after, quote unquote, the world opened up after the pandemic. And there was something
Mm,
about like her music, which is already like a religious experience to me, but like still masked. And it was the first time that I had like heard live one of her albums that came out during the pandemic. And I was like in the middle of doing my dissertation interviews that I've talked about on the pod before, and just like hearing her music and just like sobbing through this concert in just like such a
mm.
cathartic kind of way, and just amazing.
First
Pearl
concert that you
Jam,
ever went to? Do you remember?
1999, Milwaukee Summerfest.
Oh, man, you got all the vibes. Wrigley, 2016,
Yeah, so
Milwaukee Summerfest. Dude, this is how you know that this
this
guy is
was
from
the
Chicago.
Vitology tour, and the openers were the Frogs, who, if you know, you know. They are notorious for being
No.
booed and coming out in like sequined spacesuits. And that was the first opener. Second opener, Bad Religion, who just fucking banger of a band. And then Pearl Jam. And so that I saw with Jason, our friend Angela, and my parents. And then, as I said, Smashing Pumpkins was the first concert that I went to with just friends without my parents. But yeah, Pearl
Uh,
Jam, 95.
wow. Well, my other question to you was going to be, which maybe if you feel free to shout out another one of like, have you ever been to a music
Oh, I've
festival?
been
But
to
you've been
hella
to
festivals. So
Summerfest.
I actually went
So
to the first 2 years of Bonnaroo. Um, 2002,
wow.
2003. The first year of Bonnaroo, it was like maybe 100,000 people. And then since then, it has exponentially blown up, and it was absolutely incredible. The second year was a
Uh,
mess, and has become, from what I understand, basically a frat party. But those first couple years, they were very much leaning into it being a hippie jam band festival, and it has exponentially become like not that. I should look
Huh.
up. I forget who exactly the headliners were that first year, but like second year, James Brown was there. Like that was fucking sick. Just yeah, such a the whole thing was a vibe, and yeah, really good time. But I've done a bunch of like
Yeah. And
festival
also
kind of
maybe
things, but those are the ones that would be
mhm.
that's the most well known.
Maybe a bridge question because I don't know if this would warrant a rapid fire or a larger explanation. Do you have a worst concert experience?
I haven't really had any. Is this true? I don't think I've really had any bad concert experiences. I mean, so Bonnaroo was is this true, both years? The second year, I think, yeah, definitely the second year was after my first knee surgery, and so that was not easy for me. So it wasn't
Okay.
ideal, but it wasn't bad by any means. I really don't like. Nothing is standing out to me. Yeah,
That's okay. I mean, you're lucky because I can guarantee you I know mine, but I'm
care to
like
share?
Y sure, worst concert experience ever. I'm sorry, because I actually really love their music. She and Him, saw them live and walked out with my
Uh,
friend probably 10 minutes in, was super excited because, like, if you watch I Have Bangs listeners, and I only recently re-got them back in my life, but I started my Bangs era in high school because of Zoe Deschanel. Like, she is all I wanted to be. I had no personality, okay? Like, that's honestly what it was. But terrible, so
mm,
bad, left it, like, so hyped, and then it was a super large venue. You have to imagine, I don't know if it's been renamed, but formerly the Dodge Theater, in downtown Phoenix, and it was her and him on the stage with the piano and a couple of guitars, and it was just wickedly absurd, like, large venue, and they had
mm.
no stage presence, and my friend and I were like, "You wanna get out of here? You wanna go get, like, Cornish pasty and drinks?"
So
And we
to
left.
that point, there
Terrible.
have been two came to mind of like boring shows, shows that I was surprised. Like, so in high school, Bush was surprisingly really boring. It was an arena show, and
Okay.
it was the first time that I sat down at a show. Now, obviously, I love sitting at a concert. In high school, I was shocked that I was sitting at a concert. The Naked and Famous stands out to me as being weirdly boring.
Huh,
And
okay.
now I'm trying to think if I can remember what his phosphorescent is so fucking insufferable to me. Like, I hate his music. This was when I was going through shit with my partner. And I went to this because I sort of felt obligated to. And I have never been more miserable at a concert. And now that we're talking about it, that is
Hmm.
probably my most miserable concert experience.
Yeah, definitely have had, like, snooze fucking fest. Like, again, people come at me. Saw Ed
Mm.
Sheeran, took a group of, like, high school girls, not a fan, thought it was pretty boring. Don't really remember it, but I know it was there. Saw Neil
Oh.
Diamond, which was cool, I guess, but aside from, the hits, I was like, I probably could have gotten this at a
Mm.
baseball game. Like, yeah. So definitely some boring ones, and I'm sure there are others that I just genuinely can't remember. And maybe that is the worst crime, is that
Yeah.
I can't even remember I saw you, then, you didn't you didn't
So I'm
impress
going to
me.
ask a question, and I'm going to do something that I generally hate in life, but I'm going to ask you a question because I want to answer it, which is like,
I appreciate the
that's
honesty.
how we do here on the pod, radical honesty. Any like surprising concert experiences or like concerts that the listeners might be surprised to hear that like this was something you went to and that you enjoyed?
That I went to,
Yeah.
that I enjoyed. Oh, sure,
Yeah.
yeah, and then I'll let you answer, but I'll take my sweet
Uh-huh.
time before you get to answer, Brett. Yeah, of course. I saw
Mm.
Justin Bieber on their world tour, a banger of a concert. That was a concert where it was like there was a period of time in my life where, and maybe you had this, I don't remember if are you the older or are
Younger.
you the younger sibling? Okay, well, then maybe Jason was doing this for you. But I had to constantly take my sister to concerts because my parents didn't want to go. So my younger sister, shout out to the slug, she wanted to go to Bieber. She was a huge believer. And I was like, oh,
Mm.
this is going to be terrible. Banger. I was sold. After
Mm.
that, I was a believer. Still am. Like, catch me with Justin. Surprising in that I got insanely intoxicated for this concert, but it was so good. Another Chicago staple. I saw the Beach Boys
Oh
at
yeah.
Ravinia, and I love the Beach Boys, but I had no idea how much I would love the Beach Boys with Brian Wilson when he was still alive. And that when Good Vibrations came on, I I'm sure somebody took a video of me. There's an internet video out in the world of like me making a damn fool of myself. So
Hmm.
I think that would be surprising because I was really feeling it. And then another concert that people would probably be surprised that I really enjoyed. I'm just trying to think because I have had the luxury, even though we ranted at the top of how
Hmm.
inaccessible music is. I've had the luxury of seeing a lot of musical artists. I think people would be really surprised that I one of my favorite concert experiences has actually been
Hmm.
Kanye West on his Yeezus tour, which was a really, I think to this day, controversial album that I stand by. I think it was fantastic, but I loved it. And Kendrick Lamar was the
Wow.
opener. And so I've also yeah, so
Hmm.
that was really exciting. What are your answers, Dr. Brett, that you were
So the one that
waiting
I want to
to give
share,
me?
interestingly, I went to the show with Jason and our friend Gutter, nickname, not his real name.
Gutter.
And so I don't think there were no shows that I had to like drag Jason to. We share our Venn
Okay.
diagram when it comes to music is almost a complete circle, but not totally. He listens to more like hip hop and stuff than I do.
Oh, I thought that was a pun
Oh
on the
no.
band A Complete Circle.
And I probably listened to maybe more like pop and, even though like I made him listen to a Blackpink mix our entire drive down to Comic-Con last year. I don't know if he's a Blink quite yet, but we do have mostly overlapping tastes and have gone to many, many, many concerts together. But this
Mm,
was at some point in high school, I forget exactly what year, there was a VH1 Storytellers tour for Meatloaf. And it was
that is
fucking
surprising.
incredible. And what I loved about this show is one, his music is incredible. And I don't often love music that is like overly theatrical. Like sometimes it doesn't feel super
Mhm.
genuine to me, or like it doesn't always hit for me if it feels overly performative. But for some reason,
Yeah.
Meatloaf hits for me, even though he turned into a real piece of
I
shit.
would do anything for love.
But
Yeah,
this
I did.
tour, what I really liked about it is he started, I forget, I'm sure he played a song to open, but then he said, I'm assuming y'all are here because you listen to my music, and I'm sure you've seen the episode already of Storytellers. And Storytellers was kind of like VH1's version of MTV's Unplugged, where they would
Mm,
artists would often play a stripped down version and then they would talk about it, like how it came together, like what it's about, different things. And he said, I don't necessarily have new or other stories. So instead of me telling the stories that you already know, instead, I've got a bunch of people throughout the audience with microphones. So I want you to tell me a story about one of my songs that is important to you, that resonated, something. And once you tell me a story about one of my songs, then we will play that song. He's like, so me and the band, we have no
hmm,
idea what the set list is going to be tonight because it's dependent upon what you all tell us.
that's
And so
cool.
there were a couple deep cuts. Someone told a story about the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And so he played his
Mm,
song from Rocky Horror. Someone told a story about how he has a song called Two Out of Three Ain't Bad. And someone said how that was their wedding song and their partner was there. And he was like, well, clearly someone did listen to the lyrics, but great. I'm glad y'all are happy.
yeah.
We'll play the song. And it was just this really charming, endearing way for an artist to humanize themselves and connect with the audience in sort of an unconventional way. And like I'd never really experienced
Mm,
that before. And it was just such a unique concert experience. And I don't
damn,
know if folks
that sounds cool.
um, would assume that when I listen to the '90s channel and I would do anything for love, but I won't do that. Came on the radio, I will belt that so fucking loud. And recently, it
But
came on when
what
I
a belt.
was very close to my house, and I drove around the block twice until that song was done.
So then, okay, so one more rapid fire question for me, even though I said I had asked them all. What's your karaoke
I
song?
don't
Because
do
I know you don't
karaoke.
like would that be
No,
your karaoke song? Maybe you should throw that in because that
it
is
is a
a
ball, yeah, but
baller of
that
a
it
karaoke song.
requires a duet because there are two. No, there's
Do
two
it like
vocalists in that song. It
that's
requires
too. No, I'm just saying like be
no,
Sunny
you
and
can't.
Cher.
It's no, that takes away.
Okay, all right. Well, fair enough.
What's your karaoke
Fair
song?
enough. I've got a rotation because unlike you, I love karaoke. It's fantastic. Anytime, anywhere, name the place, I'll be there. It's sometimes Fergalicious. I really like a little
Mm,
Fergalicious Death. Sometimes it's Baby by
yeah.
Justin Bieber. throwback to that concert. And I consider it a duet, a screaming duet, a la that scene in The Holiday. But if you put Mr. Brightside on, like, give
Yeah.
it to me. I'm
As
ready.
someone recently described
Yeah.
Mr. Brightside as like millennials Sweet Caroline or like or what's
It's
that
true.
fucking
As somebody
Journey
who
song
recently
that
saw
people
The
love?
Killers.
Yeah, Don't Stop
Oh,
Believing.
Don't Stop Believin'.
It's like the song
That's
that
yeah, that's
young white
true.
people have to sing if it comes on.
Young white people do. It is like there is something in your DNA that if you were young and
Yeah.
white, those two. But banger. Like also saw The Killers live and like what a great concert. They
So we've talked a lot about concerts. Let's think a little bit about albums and
Mhm.
songs. What are covers that are better than the original?
Well, this is a very subjective question. I know that there's a lot of haters, but I will go with one that I think is underappreciated. I think for me, one of the best covers is a Hall&
Hmm.
and Oates cover, which I don't know if it's better, but I would say that like it matches the level so well that I'm like I could go either or. Is the Bird and the Bees 2010 tribute to the Masters? They go through all of the classics and they don't really do any fluff. They add a little bit of extra synth on things, but the vocals on it are just so smooth. And then having a female artist come in and cover like most of it, it's delicious, and it's something that if someone tells me I love Hall and Oates, which I also love Hall and Oates, I'm like, okay, I know where I'm going with you because there's no
Mm.
way that you're not gonna like this. And I just think they've done it so well. I also think that the Chicks cover of
Mm.
Landslide is just as good as Stevie Nicks, if not
I do
better.
often think that a great cover involves sort of a gender swap. There's such a
Hmm.
great like tonal experience to
Yeah,
that.
yeah. But I'm not a hater of. I would say though, I'm actually not a hater of a lot of covers generally, so long as they don't try to like Yoko Ono them and like make them really weird.
So if that was underrated, what is overrated right now?
Overrated. Okay, so we might disagree on this. I like one of her songs. I think Gracie Abrams is pretty overrated. I don't know how to differentiate her from other pop
Mm.
sad girlies. And it's not a nepo baby thing, but I can't get into her music. Maybe I will at some point, but she hasn't found me, and maybe I'm not the audience that she needs to find. I also feel like there's a lot of female rap that I just don't like, which isn't to say that I don't like MAP. I actually really do, but I've never been able to understand the hype around Cardi B. She comes on a lot at my cycle gym, for example, and it's a bop, but I'm like, I never
Mm.
actively download her songs. And I don't know if maybe it's because I feel that she's overrated or I just don't get it.
For the record, we do not disagree on Gracie Abrams. There's one song that I like, and then the rest of it, whenever it comes on the radio, is really really dull, and I kind of don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little
Yeah,
snoozy to me most of the time. I don't it's forgettable. I don't remember it.
we've talked about this before, so I think I might know your answer, but I'm curious if it will in fact be your answer. Almost perfect album, but that needed a little trimmy trim. Well, snip snip.
Oh yeah. So for me, it would be two Taylor Swift albums. One is Taylor Swift's Lover. I think Lover is a perfect album if you actually get rid of the chicks on it. I don't like Soon You'll Get Better. I think it's like it's always a skip for me. I have never listened to that song fully. And it's not because of the subject matter. I'm just like, get this out of here. Like, no. Same thing with Folklore, which is actually one of my favorite Taylor Swift albums. I go between that and Reputation. And so, whereas I think Rep is a perfect album, Folklore is almost just because sometimes, like the
Mm.
Dorothea songs and a little bit of the storytelling don't reach me as much as the more sad music on that album, which is why I also kind of like listening to it with Evermore and not as like the sisters, but as the twins in that sense, where I really do feel it's a continuation because I gravitate more towards the sad songs on both of those. It's still something that I will listen to though, that like I just will do, I'll skip a couple here and there. It's not a full listen through for me. And then I would also say one of my favorite artists who I think do have perfect albums is
Mm.
Daft Punk. And I think Random Access Memories is a near perfect album, but like eh, I skipped too much on it for it to be perfect, even though when that came out, I know exactly where I was at. I was on a bus leaving San Francisco, heading up to Napa Valley, and it just hit so perfectly that I like am transported, but I don't know. I still want them to create more
Mm.
music, which they're not, but almost perfect album.
Interesting. Yeah. With Folklore and Evermore, they've merged into one for me because I made a
Oh yeah, the
mix of them.
folklore.
And so like I just shuffle it. I actually
Mm,
at this point could not even tell you which album, what song is from which album. But it's also speaking about like time and
yeah,
place. It's hard for me to listen to those songs, even though they are really important to me, because it brings me back to my little desk in Tempe in the pandemic. And it's such a visceral
yeah.
experience. And like, we could have an entire episode on songs that take us to particular times and places. And like, maybe that's volume 2.
I think we definitely need to. I think it is because there's so many threads in all of this that it's like
Yeah.
so spatial, and we haven't even gotten into like musical geographies. So I'm with you. We got to do a
Yeah.
part two for the listeners.
Um, okay. I have one more question. And then I think we have our closing question.
Yeah,
Concert
yeah.
White Whale.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I wrote the question, but for the listeners, I'm assuming what you mean, Brett, and concert White Whale is a concert that we have yet to go to that we would love to,
Yeah.
whether it's possible or not. Yeah. Okay. I think we both have the same answer on one. Prince. Never got to see Prince, but that would be so fire. Same thing with David Bowie. I would love to go back in time. And I would dress up like, I forget her name, in the
Mm,
dress from Labyrinth because him as the Goblin King, I don't know why I'm attracted to it,
oh,
but
yeah.
I am Dr. Brett. And then Still Living, although slightly modified, is I've always wanted to see the Stones. And I know that,
They
they
still
still
tour.
do
You still
performances,
can.
even though some
Yeah.
of their members have passed on. But the Stones would be, oh, man, just to like listen. Yeah, their catalog is too good. And then also Paul McCartney. I would love to see Paul, somebody who that I love the Beatles. I talked about my Beatles phase, but independent, I
Mm.
love Wings and I've loved his solo career as well.
So, not to humble
Yeah.
brag, I did see David Bowie. I
God
also
damn it,
stood
Brett.
next to David Bowie at a concert. I forget for who it was. In the VIP section of the balcony at Webster Hall, there was a reserved cocktail table that said reserved for Coco Schwab, who is the name of his personal assistant. And two folks sat down during the opener, and that was Coco and David Bowie. I saw the Rolling Stones for my 16th birthday with my mom, who
God
was
damn it.
fangirling over Keith Richards. As soon as he walked out, she was like, he's so dreamy.
Same.
And have not seen Paul McCartney. I had the opportunities to go to the house parties that Prince used to throw at Paisley Park outside Minneapolis, but they were always like super late, would go till like, 6 o'clock in the morning. And there was
Ugh.
never a guarantee that Prince was going to show up or play. Sometimes he would come out, DJ for 30 seconds and leave. Sometimes he would like come out and play a concert for 3 hours. And like, you never knew what you were going to get. Caleb went to many
Ugh.
of these. I never went. I do have some regrets about that, but I also absolutely wish that I could have seen
That's
a proper Prince concert.
that is that is bonkers. Do you like Cher? Because I've seen Cher, and that
Uh,
tends to piss people off.
Nah, I don't have strong feelings about that.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
Now I'm trying to make you jealous because you've just made me so jealous. But you did bring up the other thing of like, it's not out of the realm of possibilities. And I think I did say this at the beginning where I was like, I'm not spending $5,000 on a concert. I don't care what I have to sell of my internal organs, Dr. Brett. Shout out to the friend of the pod, Dr. Gabby Lout,
Does she
because we've
buy
had this
organs?
conversation together. Yeah, she's my dealer. And then I've talked about this with her, and then she's like, I agree. If Daft
Mm.
Punk ever goes on tour again, catch me eating my words and selling my organs to Dr. Gabby, who also then will be with me at the concert. But like I would give my firstborn child to see
I
Daft
mean,
Punk live.
not for Daft Punk, but at this point, I would consider selling an organ just to see Dr. Gabby.
Oh,
It's been 4 years, 4 years and 4 days since we took
wait.
our graduation photos, according to,
It's
or
been
no, yeah,
7 hours.
4 years.
What's that?
It's 2026. Yeah, that's wild. Our closing
Well,
question.
last question. I mean, again, we were going to have, there's going to be a part two. So listeners, we're jazzed. As much as Brett hates jazz. Um, uh, Closing question. I want to start with you though, because I've been talking. Brett, do you have perfect albums? No skips, no notes.
Yeah, so
Do you have
I've
them?
been thinking about this question, and I think like I could come up with a laundry list of like albums from like classic rock, even like grunge albums, although there are a lot that do have plenty of skips that because at a particular time and place, like we listen to albums differently than we listen to them now. Like you put on a vinyl, you weren't really going
Yeah.
to get up and pick up the needle and skip a track, like we engaged with music differently. And so I was thinking about
Uh-huh.
albums that in this day and age where it is easy to skip, where it is easy to create a mix or to just pull out the like one or two tracks that hit and ignore the rest of like the catalog. Like,
Uh-huh.
what are the albums that I'm choosing to listen to all the way through that I don't skip? That's kind of
Yep.
how I was approaching this question. Okay.
Same. So I think I understood the assignment exactly like you, and I would agree that like that's why there's so
Mm,
many near perfects that are on a playlist, but if I
yeah.
skip, it doesn't count.
And so with that in mind, like I did want to give a shout out to Pearl Jam 10 and Grateful Dead American Beauty as like kind of classic no skip albums. But then in
Mm.
thinking about recently, what are albums that like I listen to all the way through without feeling like I want to skip? And things that come to mind are Beyonce's Lemonade. And interestingly, a few of these are the only albums that I listen to by these artists. Casey
Oh,
Musgrave's Golden Hour, which is like a
oh, that's a good
tempy,
one. Yeah.
like pandemic era album for me. It's also a breakup album for me.
Uh,
Olivia Rodrigo's Sour is a no skips album for me. Honestly, everything that Julian Baker has put out and Bon Iver's first album for Emma Forever Ago is no skip albums that come to mind for me.
Oof. Yeah. Okay. So, I'll start with probably the one that you would hate the most. Is again, Brett doesn't like jazz. I just want to insert that part from the B
Mm.
movie where Jerry Seinfeld's character is like, "You like jazz?" You like, dude. Okay, it's going in the show notes, folks. If you know, you know. Chet Baker
Mm.
sings 1956. I love Chet Baker. Also part of my cigarettes in the basement, kind of talented Mr. Ripley vibe. Like, can just put that on and be transported. Similarly, because there's some sleeper songs that people don't really like that much on the album, but I think their fire is Barry White's
Mm.
1974. Can't get enough. If you think of a Barry White song, it's
Mm.
probably on this album. But then there are some nice interludes, which don't sleep on an interlude. Maybe that's another thing of like something that's underrated. We talked about overrated. I feel like a good interlude in an album is beautiful. Shout out to Daft Punk Discovery 2001. I think it's just like the ultimate. I'm not even a rave person, but it is like the ultimate rave
Still got time to become a
album.
rave
Also,
person.
most people, I've still got time. I'll put that out in the universe, anticipating that what follows that is my ticket to Daft Punk. I'm a huge
Mm.
ABBA fan. Who isn't? So Arrival in 1976 is chef's kiss. It's so good. And then I would say, I think a perfect album to listen to in the rain, it's the perfect rain album, is In Rainbows
Mm.
2007 by Radiohead. There is something about the drums on Reckoner
Mm.
in particular. That opening is so sweet that I'm like, oh, it just gets me in my bones, Dr. Brett. And then I would also say 2012 Flume self-titled album. It just takes me back to being in college and just staying up and listening to weird, funky synth music. Before I say my last one, I will say a current one that I really like and somebody that I haven't seen in concert that I really want to, particularly at Red Rocks. I think that would be such a vibe. Is Krungbin and their album "The Universe Smiles Upon You." Um, Really solid album that I would shout out of like a more contemporary one. And then finally, I think the GOAT for me is Arctic Monkeys
Mm.
2013 AM, who I happened to see in concert in 2013 at the Marquee Theater in Phoenix. And when I tell you that I was like ready to like, I never understood the cliche of like a roadie or like a girl that would go to the concerts and like follow the guy and like fall in love. But when I was standing 7 feet away from Alex Turner's hips and he was playing knee socks, I was like so ready to become that girl. And
Mm.
I still am. Although, like, they haven't put out a great album since then, in my opinion. So I'm like, if they ever go back to that era, then I'm
Mm.
there. I'm there, Dr. Brett. So many good things, but yeah, I love it. I don't know. It makes me want to like just open up the playlist right now and just
Maybe
start
we will
listening.
do a doc to doc playlist.
Ooh, we should. We should do a shared playlist. I think we should put our playlists that we feel comfortable with in the show notes, and then we should endeavor to like send
Yeah.
something to the
All
listener
right,
at some
we'll work
point.
on that. We will be right back with our closing segment. More comment than a question.
Welcome back to the Dr. Doc podcast. We are going to end with our closing signature section, more comment than a question. And no, and despite what Brett wants to do with addendums, we will not be taking follow ups. So this week, Dr. Brett, my more of a comment than a question is I think there's some conspiracy or agreed upon something in some corner of the internet with the youths and with men. But I think it's with the youths. It's a particular kind of person that seems slightly younger than I am as it relates to
Mm,
subway etiquette. And what I mean by this is I have noticed always getting on public transportation that if I'm waiting on the platform for a train to come, that men will like get really close to me and walk by and I'm like, "Hey, there was plenty of space around. I don't know why you had to walk this close to me," in a way where I'm like, "Is this just an ego thing?" But this morning, I was thinking about I'm more of a comment than a question and I was like, "This is it." Because once again, I'm standing waiting for my train, plenty of space around me, and like a young woman passes by within about 2 to 3 inches of where I'm standing, such that I have to then walk back. And it's not like they're on their phone, they're distracted, but I'm like, is it a lack of spatial
mm,
awareness with these people? Or is it a conspiracy or some kind of code where they're like, I'm just gonna fuck with people, like back in the day when people would like
mm,
peacock intentionally to like, I don't know, make people it's like, is this a thing with young women? Because it happens way too frequently where I'm like, I don't know. It feels like my equivalent of like, hey, I'm walking here, but I'm just like, get out of my way. Like, you don't need to be this close to me. I'm just trying to wait for my train. And I don't know, it just peeves me so much because there's so much space on the platform, at least in DC. I know some
mm.
subways, like, there's not a lot and it's a spatial thing. But I'm telling you, we have the space and people are getting up in my grill, so to speak. And it makes me really mad. And I think there's a conspiracy. And that's that.
My comment this week. So a band that I actually didn't get to share, even though they might have come up in a couple of the questions. A band that maybe
Mm,
surprisingly I do have a bit of an affinity for, especially like a particular era of their career, kind of mid late is not really recently, is the Dave Matthews Band, one album in particular. But there is this anecdote has come up a few times for me recently, and so I thought this would be a fun way to end this episode. For folks who have been to Chicago, especially as a tourist, one of the most popular things to do is the architectural boat tour. And a colleague of mine went on it in January, despite there being a coming snowstorm. And it was very, very cold that day. But it's so popular and interesting. And, it's a top attraction. But there is a
mm.
plaque that was added to a bridge. And I will link this in the show notes to commemorate the moment in the early 2000s, I believe, when the Dave Matthews Band tour bus was passing over this particular bridge and inadvertently emptied their septic tanks onto the passing architectural boat tour, soaking many, many tourists in the fecal matter of the Dave Matthews Band. And as this plaque says, nobody died that day, but many people wish they had. And I will not be taking follow ups.
Okay, okay. Man, this is bad because I do want to just
I
maybe
thought
unrelated.
you who just negged on me for a
No, I
men.
know, I know. I did, but it's too good of a bookend that when I said that there were those bands that were like sometimes
Mm.
Christian and sometimes not, depending on the context, I'm like, how did you know
Is
that
that one of
Dave
them?
Matthews
Oh,
Band
really?
is one of
Oh,
those? Yeah, like could moonlight as, or it has
hmm.
moonlit as a
Interesting.
Christian rock band. Anyway, folks, we could go on forever, but we're not going to with this episode. We are actually going to take a little pause. We're calling it a summer break. So it's not goodbye forever. It's goodbye for just a little while. In the meantime, though, we have, I think I'm really proud of it. We have a really large catalog at this point of episodes for folks to dive into. So if you're just here for the first time because someone shared the pod, I would say go to the back catalog, share it with a friend, revisit. As always, please like, share, and smash those like and subscribe buttons. And we'll be back. If you have other suggestions for what we should be talking about when we come back from our little summer break, we would be happy to entertain those. But in the meantime, stay safe, enjoy yourselves, enjoy the weather, listen to some tunes,
and give us your music recommendations if you think there's things that we would like. Just not jazz. We are not accepting any jazz recommendations.
I will take all of the jazz on behalf of Dr. Brett, as he will take all of the Christian rock on mine.
Dock to Dock is co-hosted, written, produced, and edited by us, Dr. Brett S. Goldberg and Dr. Nicole K. Mayberry. Our original music was written and performed by Matt Bogdanow, and our original artwork was illustrated by Andre Gonzalez. Dock to Dock is an independent podcast and a conversation across place, perspective, and friendship. We record Dock to Dock between Washington, D.C. and Orange County, California. In Washington, D.C., we record on the ancestral lands of the Nacotchtank Anacostans, also known as the Anacostan or Nacotchtank peoples, and near the lands of the Piscataway and Pamunkey peoples. In Orange County, we record on the traditional and unceded lands and waters of the Hashemann and Tongva tribal nations.